Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Wylam here. In today's video, I want to start a series about the DJI SC Gimbal with all of the Fujifilm cameras. This is something that I'm going to be working through. There currently isn't a whole lot of information out there about the DJI Gimbal and the Fujifilm camera system, so that's definitely something that I want to cover. I've been using it for the last couple of days now, and I've been learning as much as I can. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you are not used to using gimbals, one of the things that you're going to learn early on is that balancing is always a pain in the ass. So one of the things that you definitely want to do is download the Ronin mobile app and watch the videos about balancing your camera, because it's definitely going to be useful. Now, if you're somebody that has a lot of experience balancing gimbals, then it's not going to be anything new to you, but you are going to definitely spend a couple of hours balancing your cameras. Now, the first recommendations that I do want to talk to you about is actually mounting the camera plate. One of the things that you really want to look at is that you want a little bit of slack back here, because the thing that you really have to remember is that you never want the screen to be flush with your camera, because there is a lot of heat that gets trapped behind here. So you definitely want a way to actually let it out. So what I've done here is that the camera plate, the way I've positioned it is that this is a marker on how far out the LCD panel gets to go out and still have a very balanced camera. So that's something that would definitely recommend you look at. Now, before you run off and put a camera body onto your gimbal, we do want to talk a little bit about the lens selection and also maybe the camera body that you want to use if you have multiple camera bodies like myself, because personally, this is actually a very big choice. So the first thing that we do want to talk about is lens selection. And what I've learned, because I've actually balanced all of these lenses onto this gimbal, which is about 5 or 6 lenses already. And the thing that I want to say the most is that any lens that has a barrel that actually comes out, it's going to go ahead and unbalance the camera. And depending on where the tripod mount is, it's not only going to be the tilt axis that you're going to have to balance, especially with larger lenses like the 10 to 24. And it is balanced, and I actually have a video showing the balance of it. But the problem is that even though it has an internal zoom, in other words, when I turn the zoom ring, there's really hardly any changes physically. In other words, the barrel doesn't extend, but there is enough mass that's actually getting changed in here where it actually does affect the balance. And if you were to do a big calibration balance when it's zoomed at one range or the other range, it will tell you that it needs to be balanced. Now, if I were to zoom the entire range, it is still balanced enough to where it'll work, but the problem is that it's going to be very stressful on the motors. And this is one of the reasons why I would always tell you not to buy used equipment, because while it will work, it's very stressful on the motors, and a lot of people, they probably won't care if they actually use the equipment and they plan on selling it off. So one of the things that I would definitely recommend is not really to use any of the zoom lenses. They don't work very well. This 10 to 24 is actually really hard to balance because there's a lot of mass up front here, and then there's a lot of mass in the back, so that when you're balancing this camera, it actually is very difficult, and you're going to spend quite a bit of time in order to get it to balance properly. And once you have it balanced properly, you really can't use the zoom range without it being stressful to a couple of the motors. I would definitely recommend using prime lenses like this 23mm f2, or really any of the other prime lenses that Fujifilm makes. I have the 16mm on my camera right now that I would show you. Now, if you do want to use autofocus, then I would definitely recommend the compact primes, because they're smaller, their motors are a little bit more newer, and they're going to be a lot quieter when you're actually using autofocus. But I'll definitely do another video in which I'm balancing all of the lenses and I can give you some recommendations. Now, when it comes to camera bodies, the two main choices that I would definitely go with is either the XT3 or the XT30. You can definitely use the XH1, but I would prefer either of these over to the XH1. But if you only have an XH1, it's still a good camera body to use. Now, you would choose an XT3 because it's definitely the most capable camera in the Fujifilm lineup, but I would not discount the XT30 because it's so lightweight, so compact. And then when you pair it with a prime lens, especially with one of these compact primes, it makes a really lightweight setup in which when you use your gimbal, you're definitely going to be very thankful of it, because having a lightweight setup, you're definitely going to be very happy with it after about 10 to 15 minutes of use. If you have not used gimbals for an extended period of time, Trust me on this one, when you're holding these gimbals up, it really doesn't take very long before your arms really get fatigued, and having the lightest weight setup is something that you will really enjoy. So for me personally, I do like using the X-T3, but for my main setup, I'm probably going to go with an X-T30. And if I want to have the best quality of video coming out of my X-T30, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to attach a external video recorder that can actually record to a higher grade format like ProRes, so that I can get the most flexibility. That's something that I would rather go with. Don't get me wrong, the X-T3 is still a great setup, and for a lot of reasons you might want to choose the X-T3, especially if you don't want to use an external recorder. So there are definitely pros and cons to both, and I don't think there's really a wrong choice in this one. It's just personal preference, but you're going to have to weigh the pros and cons and figure out which one you want to go with. Once you have downloaded the DJI Ronin app, which is pretty much mandatory because there's so many good features in it, go ahead and boot it up. Now, I've already downloaded it and I've already used it, so it doesn't give me the introductory screens. But if it's your first time, it's going to walk you through on how to connect it, and it's going to go directly into balancing adjustments of your gimbal. So if you want to connect, all you have to do is click up here, and then you can select your DJI Ronin, which I have turned on in the background right here. What you can do next is you can go to balance adjustments, and in here it'll test your balance. And if you click right here, these are the tutorials that you definitely want to go through before you do your balance test, because it's going to tell you how you can do it, and there's a lot of really good information there. Once you have done that, go ahead and follow the instructions, which basically means you want to tilt it at least 15 degrees. What I would recommend here is you tilt it somewhere between 20 and 25, because in my opinion, you get more consistent results if you tilt it a little bit further. So I would say around 25 to 20 degrees is a good number, because I have gotten inconsistent numbers when I stick closer to the 15 degrees, but that's just my personal unit. It could be different for your unit. Once you've done that, you can go over to motor parameters, and what I would recommend here is you do the auto tune. But as you can see, I've already done my auto tune, and it's already given me specific numbers, so I'm not going to touch that. Now, I do have recommendations if you were to rebalance your camera with a different lens. I would recommend that you go into your statuses, and then I would recommend restoring your gimbal to defaults, because sometimes when you're balancing using the balance adjustment, sometimes it just doesn't work very well. So what I'll do occasionally, if it's not working the way I think it is, I'll go ahead and restore gimbal setup. Again, this is something that I have found useful, but once you have done your auto tune and everything looks set up and ready to go, I would recommend coming in here and doing a system calibrations to kind of zero out your gyros. That is something that I would suggest to you, but I don't think it's absolutely needed. Just be sure to read up on system calibrations and see if you actually want to use it, because it is important to zero out your gyros every once in a while. Other than that, you can go to your user profiles to actually set up how your gimbal works with your joystick, and then you can go into the create icon to use all of the other functions in here. It is a very well featured mobile app, so definitely come in here and look through all of the features, because it's definitely warranted. Now, one thing that's interesting in regards to the X-T30 is that if you do have the USB-C cord plugged in, you won't actually get any camera controls. So the X-T30 is currently not supported for camera controls under the current firmware that it's being used. But one reason why you still want to have this cable connected is because you can still get power from the gimbals. In other words, your X-T30 will last a little bit longer when you have this cable plugged in, because power can be routed from that cable into your X-T30. Now, if you're using an X-T3 for your DJI gimbal, you can get the record button on your gimbal to work, but the first thing you're going to see when you first turn it on is that it's going to go into this USB mode, which is not the mode that you want, because you're not going to be able to do anything with your camera. So go ahead and shut it off, and what you're going to need to do is you're going to also have to shut off your DJI gimbal. Once your DJI gimbal is shut off, you can turn back on your camera. You can go to menu, and then you want to go to the wrench icon right here, and then you want to go to connection settings. So if you go to connection settings, what you'll see down at the bottom here is your PC connections. It's going to be by default on the USB card, and that's something that you don't need to have, because you don't need to read the USB card. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and set it to USB tethering shooting auto, and go ahead and select that. So now it says USB auto. Once you select that, if you go ahead and put it into your camera mode, now you can go ahead and turn on your camera, and then what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to use this record button to focus. So if you half press down and then if you hold it, it will take a picture. It's actually a very slow process, so you have to push down halfway, you see the focus, and I'll start pressing it now, and then it takes a picture. So there is definitely quite a bit of lag time, and honestly I don't think I would ever actually use this feature for taking photos. Now personally for me, I would never use the X-T3 to take pictures on a gimbal. So for me, I would never actually use it in USB auto. What I would do is I would go ahead and set it back to USB card. And what this will allow me to do is it'll allow me to keep the cord plugged into my X-T3. And what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to get external power to the X-T3. So right now the gimbal is not turned on. I have it back into USB card. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the DJI gimbal. Now this will go ahead and put me into the USB mode. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead, turn off my X-T3. The gimbal is turned on right now. I'm going to turn back on my X-T3. It's going to go ahead and go into USB mode. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my DJI gimbal. It's going to go ahead and go away. Then I'll turn it back on. And now the DJI gimbal is turned back on, but what you'll notice is that I have power coming out of my DJI gimbal into the X-T3 because of this USB-C cable, which means the X-T3 overall is going to last a whole lot longer because it is drawing power from the DJI gimbal via this cable. So that's something that I do want, and you're going to be able to get that and still have control over your X-T3 with these buttons so that you can actually start recording. And hopefully in the future, DJI and Fujifilms can work together to make this workaround a little bit easier to use, because getting USB power into the camera is definitely super useful. So this video was just a quick overview of some of the things that I want to cover right away. There's definitely a whole lot more to cover. There's definitely a lot of things that I want to talk about in terms of balancing the gimbal, which is probably going to be the next video, because there are some odd quirks to this gimbal and I definitely want to touch upon that, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And of course I want to go through the app itself and also a lot of the configurations and a lot of controls. So for the next couple of weeks, definitely look out for those videos. But if you have any questions, definitely leave it below. I'll try to answer them, and I'll also try to incorporate them into the videos that I'm going to be doing shortly. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.